Let's talk Dayton Flyers basketball. Joining us, Doug Stevens, a.k.a. Flying with Doug. You may know him from Flying with Doug podcast and all of his platforms, especially on X. I'm still going to call it Twitter. But Doug, once again, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. Hopefully you can hear us. I know we were having some problems earlier on. How do you hear us?
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
We hear you fine and dandy.
Awesome.
Once again, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule. Super excited that you're here with us for the next 30 minutes. Doug, let's talk about it real quick. We'll get some basic questions out of the way to kind of break the ice. Doug, how did you become a Dayton Flyers basketball fan, and how did you become so invested with the Dayton Flyers basketball?
So thank you. First off, thank you guys for having me on the program. Really appreciate it. Jackson, been talking back and forth with you for a little while now, and appreciate what you're doing here. Appreciate you guys having me on the show. To answer that question, my grandpa moved here from Minnesota, and he had a scholarship to play here at Dayton back in the late 60s, and that's how the family got brought to the Dayton area. And it's just been in our family for ever since. So we've had season tickets probably 25, 30 years now. So as a family, so it's just been in my blood, and it's been something I've always enjoyed. Growing up, we would go to the Flyer basketball camps. It was Oliver Purnell back then. And, watching Tony Stanley, Nate Green, some of those other guys, at the camp was just, it ingrained it into you. You always wanted Dayton to succeed. And it just, as I gotten older, it meant more and more and more. So it's been a long tradition in my family to be Dayton Flyer fans.
Big Dayton Flyer fans. And now into your adult years, you're looking to spread your knowledge with Dayton Flyers basketball, opening up the Flying with Doug podcast, opening up your Flying with Doug social media pages, keeping everybody, including myself, informed of Dayton Flyer news. I've spread your name around quite a bit, and I said you're the most reliable guy when it comes to Dayton Flyer news. So what kind of led you to want to start those platforms and get into the media realm covering Dayton Flyers basketball?
So what kicked it off was, We've had some very successful podcasts for Dayton, and I always felt like I wanted to provide maybe a different perspective on the team. And before the pandemic, I didn't know this was a possibility. I didn't know podcasts could happen. And then, after the pandemic, everybody started getting into it and started creating their own thing. And I thought, this is something I'm super passionate about. I enjoy talking about it with everybody I come in contact with. Why not go talk to some like-minded people and provide my perspective? And it started slow, and then slowly built up over last year, and now I'm to where I am, and I do a decent job. I'm not trying to not saying anything special, but it's about passion, and it's about showing people that you care. And I think that's what I provide with Dayton, is people know that I really want this team to win. And sometimes I'm not always the most positive person. I will call it as I see it. And I really just enjoy the Dayton Flyer basketball. It's important to me. And that's what I hope shines through on some of my podcasts and things like that.
Absolutely. Well, once again, you do a terrific job. Super excited to have you here on the show. Doug, let's take a look real quick at last season for the Dayton Flyers. An incredible run. Deron Holmes, Nate Santos, a lot of star-studded talent on that Dayton Flyers roster. They were maybe a bit of an underdog heading into the regular season at the start of last year, but then, they go on that big winning streak. They get into the top 15 at one point in the season. They make it to the NCAA March Madness tournament. Maybe a bit of a letdown not winning the A-10 tournament, but still made it as an at-large team and was able to come back, win pretty big against Nevada, ended up losing against Utah in round number 2.
Arizona.
Sorry.
Yes. No, you're good. Arizona. It was an interesting season, because you get pockets of fans that see things one way, and then you'll talk to other people and see things the other way. I felt like after January 20, after the Richmond game that we ended up losing, where Deron didn't play a great game, I felt like our basketball level just never got back to the point where it was earlier in the year. And I felt like that was an issue. And then, we kind of limped our way into the tournament. We luckily had padded our record enough to get to the point where, hey, we were an at-large bid, but hey, where are we going to end up? And then we got a tough draw with Nevada. You could see by the first 30 minutes of that game that was a really difficult game, and luckily the guys turned it on in the second half. Deron Holmes led Dayton into a nice, really, really nice comeback against Nevada. And then you go up against a team like Arizona. Arizona is absolutely loaded with talent. I mean, they've got pros everywhere, and they had one. I mean, their center went to the transfer portal and made himself a boatload of money. And that was a good game. That game was a lot closer than the 10 points indicated. There was points in that game where Dayton had a chance, and they just could not get the lid off the basket. Overall, I'm going to call last season a success. I think Dayton, had they not played some of their worst basketball at the end of the year, could have had a little bit of a higher seed and potentially an easier second-round opponent. But that's how the cards play out sometimes. We're dealing with college kids. There's ups and downs. There's highs and lows. And that's what we experience, playing a good team against a good Arizona team. I can't be too upset with the result. So I would say I'd give last season probably a B+ if we're going letter grades, guys.
And Doug, taking a look last season with the Dayton Flyers, what was your biggest takeaway and what was your biggest surprise last season watching the Flyers over the course of the 23-24 year?
Biggest surprise. Biggest surprise. Well, I'm going to go with an individual player because at the time when we start the season and we look where it ended, I'm going to shout out Javon Bennett because Javon Bennett got thrown into a position that he wasn't expected to be in, and by all accounts succeeded at that. He became the starting point guard of the Dayton Flyers after Malachi Smith hurt his knee. And over the course of the year, I think Javon Bennett got better and better. He got more comfortable in his role. And I think Javon Bennett definitely needs a shout out in that situation because at the beginning of the year, hey, this guy's going to come in. He's a junkyard dog. He's going to play great defense and he's going to battle his ass off. Sorry for cussing if that's an issue. My bad, guys. I get excited sometimes. But he's going to battle and he's going to work hard. But during the year, we saw him play make. We saw him make some threes. We saw him had some really big halves that really helped Dayton succeed as the year went along. So Javon Bennett, big shout out to him.
Yeah, I think you would be doing Bennett a disservice not saying he did phenomenal last year. I mean,
yeah,
he was expected to maybe be, seventh, maybe eighth man off the bench or last season, and then Smith goes down right off the bat, 7 minutes into the year, and he played insane for someone who wasn't even really expecting to start, maybe even a game last year, to just get thrown in and play at the level Javon Bennett did last year. You would be doing a disservice not saying he had a phenomenal season, and you would be doing a disservice not giving him a shout-out for how good of a season he had last year because to be as young as he is, to be size-wise as small as he is compared to everyone out there on that floor, and to then be thrown into the Dogs, thrown into the Wolves immediately, not expecting that at all, and to have the season he had last year, I think you'd be doing a disservice not saying Javon Bennett was one of the more standout players from the Flyers last season.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, a guy who comes in from a much smaller conference. He was the Defensive Player of the Year in the MEAC, comes here from Merrimack, and like I said, we're expecting a good defender. We're expecting a guy you can throw on another team's best guard for stretches, not come in and run an entire offense with an NBA player as your center who we're trying to, get him to the next level. Nate Santos is trying to find his footing as a starter, as a big-time contributor on a team after coming from Pitt where he played limited minutes. Enoch Cheeks, who was a really good player in his own right, comes over from Robert Morris. You got to get these guys all involved, and you're all learning on the fly with a brand new point guard who wasn't expected to be out there and probably didn't get a lot of first-team reps in the preseason and all leading up to the year. Impressive job. Guys, I do want to tip my cap. The first, half of that, first probably third of the schedule, you play teams like Northwestern, you play teams like LSU, St. John's, Houston, SMU. Those type of games definitely help prepare him. And, you get your butt kicked against Houston, where Houston, a lot of people thought could be a Final Four on an Elite Eight team. We lose to them by 14. He has a rough game. But he showed, but that's a learning experience for a freshman, or not a freshman, but a new guy who wasn't expected to take this big role on. And you saw it as the year went along. He had big games against Oakland. He had big games against Rhode Island, Richmond. So, just to name a few. But Javon Bennett definitely deserves it, and that really excited for him. Hopefully he can continue that, and definitely expecting big things from him again this year.
Doug, the Flyers just gave out their final scholarship offer yesterday. Big commit for the Dayton Flyers, and they also added quite a bit in the transfer portal, something that they nailed last offseason before last season. So, Doug, we invite you to stay with us. We do have to pause real quick for a commercial break. We're going to talk about what the outlook is for this new year for the Dayton Flyers basketball. We'll be back right here on Sports Now on the TKDS Sports Network. Welcome back here on the TKDS Sports Network. Jackson Lycap alongside Matthew Pennington, our producers Kevin and Ivan in the building as well. We're joined with Doug Stevens, Flying with Doug, host of the Flying with Doug podcast. Doug, once again, thank you for your time. Also, I owe everybody an apology. I didn't formally introduce Doug and Matt, my co-host. Doug, meet Matt, meet Doug. Matt, you love him already. He's got a Browns flag in the background. Matt over here.
Awesome.
Huge Browns fan.
I Guilty also. So, yeah, no. Go Browns, of course. Definitely.
Doug, once again, thank you for taking time out of your busy Thursday to join us here today. Let's take a look at what to expect next season for the Dayton Flyers. The Flyers, they made a huge splash this season when it comes to the transfer portal, adding players such as Zed Key, Jacob Connor coming over, Posh Alexander as well. You could definitely tell Anthony Grant and that coaching staff making a splash once again in the transfer portal, something that paid off big for them heading into last year.
Yeah, so back-to-back seasons, big additions. Last year, like you said, like we mentioned, Javon Bennett, Nate Santos, Isaac Jack. We didn't get to see we didn't get to see some of the other guys because of circumstances in recruiting. But this year, Zed Key, Ohio State comes down the road. In my opinion, guys, this is going to be really good for Zed Key. I don't think Zed Key can play in the NBA, but I do think he could have a very long career overseas somewhere else. I think he's going to have a good year in the A-10. He's never had to be the lead horse, and I think he's going to have to do a little bit of that. I'm expecting him to be almost a double-double guy every night, maybe 12, 13 a game, 9, if he can get to 10, that would be great. So I'm looking for big things out of Zed Key. We watched him a lot at Ohio State. Again, never had to be the guy, but here – I think he's gonna really go into that role and be a really good player. And then Posh Alexander, a fantastic guard. Dayton has been connected to Posh Alexander on and off for years, dating back to high school. We're getting a New York style guard who can finish at the basket, who probably could work on the jump shot a little bit, but he can run a team. I expect him to be the starting point guard of this team day one. Also, what I'm excited for bringing Posh Alexander is he locks up on defense. He is a good defensive player. He's going to make the other team's point guard work for everything. And, combining that with potentially, there's a bunch of different lineups we could look at, but potentially putting him in with Enoch Cheeks, who's also a great defender. It's going to be a nightmare for A-10 backcourts next year with those guys lining up against you. And then in the transfer portal also, you guys mentioned Jacob Connor's coming over from Marshall, 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot wingspan. He's more of a stretch 4, and I'm hoping this summer he continues working on that shot, because there could be some lineups where he gets in and we can maybe move Nate Santos to the 3, which I think could be more of his natural position with his size. I look for Connors to come in and play, hopefully 10, 15 minutes a game, unless he's hot and then he gets some extra time. But a guy who I think could help spread the floor with his shooting ability and size. So 3 very strong guys in the transfer portal. Posh Alexander obviously going to be the starting point guard. Zed Key going to be the starting center. Connor's going to be more of a role player, but exciting. That's really, really 3 solid guys in the portal, like you guys mentioned.
And Doug, the transfer portal, it does have 2 sides of the coin. You have all those great players that the Dayton Flyers added, but then you take a look at the players that the Flyers lost. They lose Kobe Brea to Kentucky. You lose Kobe Elvis going to Oklahoma. And then, of course, Deron Holmes staying in the NBA draft. Some big departures for Dayton last year. How do you expect these new transfers to come in and fill the shoes of the players the Flyers lost just from last year?
So let's start off with Deron Holmes, because that's a very bright point, and that kid deserves all the credit in the world. He's been phenomenal for 3 years. I mean, All-American, A-10 Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, everything you can imagine, everything you want from a player is what Deron Holmes is. The perfect basketball, not tools and everything like that, but the perfect ambassador for your program. He's going to go to the NBA, and he's been promised a first round pick. So hopefully that works out for him. There's a couple different teams I hope he can go to and start his career. But just a massive shout out to Deron Holmes. Been incredible for UD. Next on the list, Kobe Brea. Kobe Brea, he was a guy I thought we could keep. And, then the news comes out and that was a kick in the stomach. He's just a guy that we've seen grow and become just a phenomenal basketball player. Goes to Kentucky, and I wish him the best there. I hope everything works out and he can be healthy and show on a bigger stage just how good he is, because we got to see it against Nevada and Arizona, but now we get to see it throughout a whole season. I look forward to watching him play for Mark Pope in Kentucky. Last guy on the list, Kobe Brea. Guys, Kobe Brea is a roller coaster ride. He is not one of my favorite guys. If you do follow me on X, I am not a Kobe Brea guy, but I do appreciate him coming from DePaul. And at times, he was a really good facilitator, really good creator off the dribble. It just felt like sometimes he dribbled a little bit too much. Oklahoma's getting a guy who could definitely create and definitely hit tough shots. So, I hope things go well for him at Oklahoma. I just never felt like it clicked 100% here at Dayton, and that happens sometimes. So I wish him well at Oklahoma. But three good players, guys, but I'm excited because we bring in Posh Alexander, who we know is a proven commodity. He's played big time basketball in the Big East. He's going to come in. He's going to solidify that point guard position, and then he's going to have to make up for some of the creation and some of the stuff that Kobe Elvis was able to do. But I think if you look at him top to bottom, he is a better basketball player than Kobe Brea and a more of a actual point guard. So that I feel very good about that position right now with Posh Alexander being the starter going forward.
And also yesterday, Dayton, they added they gave out their final scholarship yesterday, and I promise I'm going to butcher this name.
He's French, guys.
100%
He's French.
Promise I'm going to butcher the name. But Emile Elatang from France coming over to play with the University of Dayton. A young kid with a lot of potential as well. Dayton has now filled all 13 scholarships on that roster. Unless anything else happens, unforeseen circumstances throughout pretty much here to the start of the season, we now know what the Dayton Flyers roster is going to consist of 2024-2025. Doug, you kind of touched base on it a little bit, but who do you think's going to make up the starting five, and who do you think is going to be your biggest role players coming off the bench next season?
Okay, so I went live on my X channel talking about this a little bit yesterday, so I am prepared. And then I did the YouTube video on Emile Latang. He's French. It's going to be very hard to say. Excited to have him. Excited to have that height and potential. Another floor spacing big who likes to shoot the three. Starting lineup, Jackson, is going to be interesting because, Malachi Smith has been a very interesting player. He's dealt with a lot of injuries. We saw him his freshman year. He was very, very good. But it's been almost 2.5 years removed from that. And it's hard for me to just say, okay, you're right back in the lineup. You're AG's guy. That's hard for me to do because it's been 2 years, guys. He played 7 minutes last year? That's really difficult. How has he had time to improve his game? So I started with Posh. I do believe, just based on what I've seen, based on the years with his staff, I do think Malachi Smith will start at the 2, so they're going to have a two-headed monster there. Enoch Cheeks will start at the other guard position. Nate Santos at the 4, Zed Key at the 5 is what I believe the staff will go with. Now, me personally, I would like to see a couple different things, but as of right now, guys, that's who I think starts game 1 this coming year.
And then Doug, when you take a look at all what you guys seen, do you think that's the Dayton Flyers have as well coming off the bench? Are you expecting any minutes at any time early on in the year from Elatang, and are you expecting any more? What are you expecting is maybe the 6th man and the 7th man and some of those role players off the bench that could ultimately work their ways into the rotation and playing consistent minutes for the Flyers?
So consistent minutes for the Flyers. In my opinion, I think right now you have to look at it. Javon Bennett is going to play major minutes for the Flyers. He's going to come in and he's going to hopefully get to be a little bit more of what the role he was originally supposed to have. Defense, hit the threes. He doesn't have to worry about setting up the offense as much. Isaac Jack, for what he is a really solid basketball player. He is great around the basket. I hope he's improved some of his footwork and things like that. I think Isaac Jack is going to be another key cog in this team. And then we've got some injuries that we're dealing with. Simon is recovering from something from an injury. Marvell Allen is recovering. So those guys, we don't know when they're going to be back exactly. But we got Hamad Musa coming in. He's one of the recruit we signed 2 weeks ago. He's a guy who's gotten some very lofty projections on some of the mock sites. Projected to be a top first-round pick in next year's draft. We will have to see about that. I dove in about him a couple weeks ago. He's a guy who is a good creator, a three-point shooter, a guy who I hope can get some minutes as the season goes along. And then Emil Letang, he's going to have to put some size on, guys. He is a very slight frame. The A-10, for all everybody says about it, it is a very physical conference. They let you bang. They let you foul. It does definitely get physical. He's going to have to be prepared for that. I think he could work his way into the rotation if he's shooting a good percentage. He's got to shoot 33 to 35% to really break into that rotation, because around the basket, I do think it's going to take some time for him to be ready. But I expect this. I'm hoping that we get no more red shirts, guys. We cannot, in this day and age in basketball, you cannot red shirt people anymore. They have to be ready, or they're going to transfer either way. If you red shirt me, I'm transferring. If you don't, and I don't get enough time, I'm still transferring. So why not have everybody ready and just go from there? I don't think the red shirt can be part of the team this year. I mean, we redshirted Marvell Allen last year. He was dealing with stuff. We redshirted Juwan Simon last year. We need those guys. We need everybody to be ready potentially for anything to happen. So no more red shirts is the biggest thing I'm looking for.
And Doug, real quick, I know we only have you for a couple more minutes. What are your expectations this season for the Dayton Flyers? Do you think it's going to be pretty much similar to what they did last season, or do you think it'll be a little bit of a drop-off, a little bit better? What are your expectations for the 2024-2025 Dayton Flyers men's basketball program?
My expectations are always high because I go into every year, I'm like, hey, we got to win the A-10. It's just that's how it is with me. I believe that's the ultimate goal every year. I think it is going to take a little bit of time. We've got to see how good some of these freshmen are. We got to see when some of these guys get back from recovering from surgeries, injuries, what this roster looks like. I think we have the guys, though, to win the A-10. Loyola Chicago is going to be really good. They have a strong class coming in. St. Louis absolutely reloaded with the new coach and bringing over those kids, from Illinois State. It's going to be tough. Those are my top three teams. Dayton, Illinois State, Loyola Chicago are definitely going to be contending for the title. But to me, that's the goal. We've got a lot of good games against Power 5 competition to start the year. We got another early season tournament. Those are all measuring games. We'll see very early how good this team can be. So, in my opinion, it's A-10 championship or bust, and we haven't done that in a long, long time, guys. And it gets reminded all the time on Twitter from other fan bases. So we've got to get it done. That's the goal. Win an A-10 championship.
Doug, one final question. This is more of a personal question towards you. You've been a lifelong Dayton Flyer fan. You've had season tickets for, you mentioned, almost your entire life. What has been your favorite memory? Your favorite memory, it could be from when you've been covering the Dayton Flyers or just watching as a fan. What's been your favorite memory when it comes to Dayton Flyers basketball?
Favorite memory? Wow. Favorite memory would be beating Ohio State in the NCAA tournament when Aaron Kraft missed the go-ahead basket after V. Sanford had the bank shot, and you get the iconic picture of Aaron Kraft sitting back like this on the floor underneath the basket, and you can see the Flyers going to celebrate. That entire run in the tournament was fantastic. We went to the Elite Eight game in I think it was in Memphis when we played Florida. They had Patrick Young. They had a couple other good players at Florida. I think we lost by 10. Devin Oliver had a good game, but just beating Ohio State in the tournament, that entire last sequence was incredible basketball. So that'll probably be the highlight right now. If Obi Toppin and those guys got to play in the NCAA tournament, it could probably be different. But that came to mind when you first asked, was beating Ohio State in the NCAA tournament.
Well, Doug, once again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on Sports Now. We love talking to you for the last half an hour, and we certainly would love to invite you back on this show as well. We'd love to talk more Flyers basketball with you throughout the offseason and even into the season next year.
That sounds great, guys. Whenever you need me, if I can make time, I'll be here. I definitely appreciate you guys having me on, and obviously, good luck with the show and keep it going. You guys have been great. Thank you.